The difference between reading and studying is that reading is all about getting exposure to the material so that you're familiar with it, so that you kind of have a general understanding of what you're learning. Studying is using spaced repetition, which is the repeated spaced testing of information, where you need to weight those gaps to see what you're going to forget, because you don't know the half-life of your memory. You have to wait enough time and then forget, and then practice the retrieval process to see what you remember. And as for why you need a goal in mind, well, if you think back to the bus driver story, the bus driver would be 29 or 12 or 13. You didn't know what to look for until you knew what the question was. So that's why in the 4 steps of what to do in order to prepare your brain to take in new information, the first step is to skim through all of the information so that you preview your brain, so you know what you're looking for, and then you look at the end of the chapter, you know the questions that it's going to be asked, so that you can then be ready to answer them. So the reason we do that is to prepare your brain to take in that new information. And I know I just mentioned the first 2, but the last 2 is look at all the bold words, because those are the words the author wanted you to focus on, or words that are colored, or anything that makes them stand out, that has contrast of color, which is the color of it, or contrast of size, that it's bigger than the other words. And then the final step is to look at this introduction and the summary, so you kind of know the main points that the author is trying to make you understand. And once you've done all that, you have a good sense of what's going on, so you can go ahead and read with understanding, and then you can test yourself with those key points in mind. As for why we study multiple times, well, it has to do with the forgetting curve. Erwin Ebbinghaus, he learned his 2,300 words. After 20 minutes, he had forgotten 40% of the information. After 63, he'd forgotten 55% of the information, which is to say, we forget really fast. And we need to space out the repeated testing of information so that we can practice the retrieval process of that memory. We are really good as humans at recognizing information and observing that information, but we're really bad at retrieving it. So in order to strengthen the neurons in our brain that retrieve information, we have to actually practice the act of recall, the thinking and retrieving memories. And the more we do that, the better we get. And in order to make sure we're doing it efficiently, we have to space it out over time, so we let ourselves forget before we do so. As for why it's unproductive to study things multiple times that we're getting right, it's because of the idea of Feist, the 5 letters, F-E-I-S-T. Was it forgotten immediately? Was it effortfully recalled? Were you immediately able to recall it? Did you struggle to recall, or was it too soon to know? Using that acronym and those letters, we can figure out that the first time we test ourselves, we can figure out if we know it immediately, or if we struggled, or if we need to, when we need to retest ourselves. The second time, the immediate retesting of it is useful because we want to see what we remember, but if you retest it again, because you already tested it 2 times, the third time it's too familiar. You don't know if you're going to forget it, because we don't know how long the half-life of our memory is. We don't know how long it's going to take until we forget it, so we have to wait enough time. So it's not effective to keep repeating the testing immediately after that more than 2 times. You need to wait some time and then retest it later to efficiently study. And finally, how long should we wait between the repeated testing? The first time we should do is immediately after we learn something. Then after that, you should try and do it an hour later. Then later that day, 8 to 24 hours later, and then you should keep doubling the time of testing unless you fail to recall it. So immediately, 1 to 8 hours later, then a day, 2 days, 4 days, 8 days, and keep going. But if at any time in that cycle you forget the information, back to scratch, and then you keep repeating the testing of that information. And that is what we learned in the forgetting curve. This was my Flipgrid video, just a model for you guys, what you are being asked. And you can see that even in my video over here, I've had to retake some of these clips 2, 3, 4 times, and it's still not perfect. And the more I do it, the better I'd get, the better you will get. So I encourage you guys, when you're making this video, to remake this video multiple times. The more you make it, the more testing of the information you get, because this is, in fact, a testing of the information. If you could retrieve it and say it and explain it in a way that others understand it clearly, like to a 5-year-old, you get it. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I can't wait to see the rest of your Flipgrids.